Hey, this is Daniel from growingmusicstudio.com, and I'm here with Greg from grouplessons.com. And today we're going to talk about why kids make slow progress in lessons and how Greg has helped kids pass more music at home than they do with him in studio and with his teaching staff at his music school. I think it's going to be an interesting conversation because in 15 years of teaching students, I rarely saw a child move forward in their book while away from the studio. And to be clear, I'm not talking about mastering their current songs. I'm talking about making progress on songs that the teacher has never introduced to them in the lesson. Maybe they introduced the concept. Maybe the teacher taught them, the musical concept or skill that unit represented for the child. But I'm talking about, that child not moving on to other songs that demonstrated that concept, that the teacher had just taught the previous week. Rarely saw it. So that's what we're covering today. And Greg, I think I'm going to open with this question. Mm-hmm. Why do most music studios in schools, in your opinion, why do they struggle to help kids make progress outside of the studio? The kind of progress I was talking about just a second ago, the kind of progress where the child feels empowered to try music that they haven't been formally taught. Not the concept, but the song itself.
It's the exact same reason that you and I would have trouble learning new Spanish outside of a once a week Spanish class. It's a foreign language, and if you're in an environment where that language isn't being immersed, you're not in some immersive experience, away from class. If your class is the only shot that you get every week of some semblance of immersion, then you go away from that, and then you get away from the language, and then you get away from that is the lifeline that a student needs, is being able to understand how to read music, how to hear it, how to turn around and execute it on the instrument. And so I do my very best to try to teach beginners music like you would teach any language. I try my best to put a student in an environment where they're in that immersion environment at the studio, but then they can also take that same environment home and plug in and be in it. And without the tools that I have, some of the online tools that I have, it would be a struggle. And in fact, in my early years teaching, I saw a lot of that struggle.
Okay. I think I alluded to this earlier, but I had, my own way of teaching group lessons. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that was really important to me was that sight reading ability, the ability for the child to kind of grasp that music on their own. And like I was saying earlier, like even with students that were very independent, there were times in the context of that group lesson that they'd be left alone with a brand new song, and I'd come back over and they had it. Even with that, rarely did I have a child in 15 years. I could probably count on one hand the number of times a child made progress and passed another song outside of that lesson. Mm-hmm. So for you, what was the aha moment? And I don't even know if this is the best question, so I would even ask you to rephrase the question potentially. Like, what was the aha moment when you were like, this is frustrating? Like, I think we all as teachers can like really so yeah. Okay. I'm gonna stop.
Sure. You play the piano with 3 of your 5 senses. Okay, I think I said this last week. We're not smelling and tasting the music, but we do touch it with our fingers, and we hear it and we see it. We see the music, we see our fingers line up with the keys. But arguably the most important of those 3 senses is your hearing. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what the song is supposed to sound like, then you're left to just decode it visually. And for a new note reader, this is a new language, it's unrealistic, and I would say even unfair, to expect a student to just see what's on the page, to look at the score, and then to understand what that's supposed to sound like. And so you have to arm the children with audio cues. You have to say, this is what the song's going to sound like. And I do not have any problem sending children home with like an audio track and say, listen to this, and try to play along with this. I do not believe in my experience, I've seen so many good results. I'm beyond any doubt that that would be some kind of crippling thing. Like, oh, students are going to learn to depend on the way it sounds. Maybe it'll
Mm.
slow down their note reading. To the contrary, the more you can immerse yourself in a new language in all senses daily, not once a week, but daily, you just accelerate your continued immersion into it. You've seen this. You know that note readers either spiral up or spiral down. Your
Yeah.
best sight readers, and everyone watching this, you know, your best sight readers can learn music more quickly, and so they devour more music every day, every week, every month, every year.
Yeah.
And people who struggle, less. And so there's a trajectory that spirals up or a trajectory that spirals down.
Other than those audio cues, are there any other things that a teacher can bring to bear, teaching in a traditional environment that could help to advance that child's progress at home, other than those audio cues? Like, so in other words, you're saying, hey, give that kid, a music track for them to understand what the song sounds like. Are there other things that a teacher could do?
I think it would help. And there's all kinds of ways that you could do this in a traditional lesson. I would say, teachers can easily just video record their hands playing the song and send it to the parent as a text message. That way the
Yes.
parent can control, like if the parent wants the child to hear it maybe 2 or 3 times, not 50, 60 times. You don't want
Right.
parakeets, you do want note readers. But that would be a way to do it. And let me just say, I've seen night and day difference. I'm going to talk about 2 different students if I can.
Yeah.
Early
Before
in
you
my
do that, though,
Yes.
I do want to make the point that actually is a great idea. That idea of being able to send the text to the parent with the hands and that sort of thing. But we fall again in the trap, and I know that you've got a solution for this. We fall again in the trap of, oh, that's putting an extra burden on the parent at home. So even though as teachers we know what would work, we can't use that. We can't use that tool because the parent won't play ball with us. So I just think it's important to point that out, that there are actually
Right.
things that we could do, but we are blocked and stymied at every turn.
Sometimes, yes. It
Yeah.
is the parent that's paying us. And so if it's that same parent that's then like dropping the ball, at least we're like, well,
Yeah.
it's not me. but
I,
yes, if the student doesn't win either
yeah.
way, focusing
Yes.
on the
Yeah.
success of the student. I mean, which grown up can point the finger and say, back to the student, what can we do for them? There's not always an easy answer.
So let's talk about those 2 students that you did something for that you were talking about
Okay.
earlier.
So early in my career, I noticed really, if a student went home and practiced all week, there is a good student comes back to their next lesson wanting to make the teacher happy. And it's very humbling and almost frightening to me what a powerful psychological drive that children have to make their caretakers happy, their parents, their teachers. And the more a teacher is respected by the student, the more that student is likely to want to please the teacher. And while that's a good thing, it can be crippling to the student with anxiety if they aren't sure that they're going to do something right.
Right.
Okay. I had a new note reader and lines and spaces. Okay. This is DEF. That's on the treble clef, a space, a line, and a space. And she was looking at a D to an E, a space to a line. And she was getting some lines and spaces mixed up earlier in the lesson, and she was rattled. Right? I knew she could just calm down and see that's a line, that's this. This is a space, that's a line, and it's a step. But she was already in her head, and she was anxious. Right? So she played D, and she could not press the E. Like she knew it was E, but instead of pressing it, because Daniel, pressing would fill the room with sound. It would expose its exposure. Right? It would expose her, and she couldn't do it. So what she did is she just tapped it and looked at me with these pleading eyes, like, is this the note? And I'm guessing over half of the teachers that are watching this have seen exactly that in a class. And the philosopher in me, I break it down like, why is the student doing this? Okay, she's feeling anxiety. She can only tap because
she doesn't want to commit.
The exposure. And part of that is that student was home all week working on a song, but not sure 100% what it was supposed to sound like, not sure if she was, and she had missed some notes. She had some note reading errors in the song before, and now this second song, she was just rattled. And I want to share my screen. I want to show you a student of mine who, this guy right here. This came up on my Facebook memories a couple weeks ago because studio recitals. This guy is about to go into first grade. He was a kindergartner, and he's a bright kid. Okay. Never in my early years could I have gotten him as far as he had gotten in his first year and a half. He started lessons at age 4. Not all students can. So, I mean, he's a gifted kid, but even gifted students, I would have never been able to take him through 400 songs in a year. But here he is. He made it through all of his method books. He's playing a Bergmuller piece. Let's see if I can get this to play. Right. He's got good rhythm, good precision, and
it's very crisp.
Yes, of course, that's Bergmuller's ballad, right?
Yeah. I believe that's in Faber 4.
He's playing it better than me. Like my left hand. There we go. But he got to that point because it was the spiral up. Okay, he figured out how to read notes, and then he just wanted more, right? And so he was reading more music, and that new music was available to him at home. He could read as many new songs as he wanted to. He could pass and complete as many songs as he wanted to. Like, there was no limit, there was no ceiling. I just said, go home, do as much as you can, and he just swallowed it. And he's not an isolated case. We see lots and lots of students do this. I think you have a student graph that you want to pull up. You can talk about.
But I think before we even go there, I think this would be a good time for us maybe to pivot and say, like, you know, the concept of this video was like addressing this issue of not making progress at home. I think, you know, what then did you invent to do that? And, you know, I'm not trying to be, you know, overly dramatic here, but how did you solve the problem? How did you solve the problem?
Well, the software that we made for grouplessons.com provides a background track, but it also provides a grader. So if you connect your piano to a computer, and then you get an accuracy score. And we just tell our students, you pass the song when your accuracy is above the number X, you know, X, Y, Z.
Yes.
And so students, they treat it like a game. And most students really love it. For most personality types, it's just hitting them square where they want to be. School-age children, you know, they want to be challenged. They want to get good grades in school. And you just say, hey, this is a way to score yourself. And it doesn't feel like, you know, a midterm or a final exam. It feels more like a video game. But but we give them the ability to do this. And for teachers that have never tried this, you know, they might think, okay, group lessons, online tools, this all sounds like you're going to produce students who really struggle with basics. But I can tell you from experience, it's not true. You are covering basics. You are trying to build a base that this student is going to have for their lifetime. You're trying to teach a language, and to do it in a gamified, immersive way, a way that students, you teach them how to use the software in class, and then they just take it home and run with it. It's just a miracle.
And something that you're saying there kind of reminds me of the podcast episode we did a couple of weeks ago with Nate, where you were talking about, you know, kind of the proofs in the pudding. Like, you've produced elite pianists, and more than one from the studio. So that's one of those things too, where on paper, it might not seem that the multi-level group system that I used for many, many years would be able to do that. But, you know, I had students getting the highest score in my state for their RCM level. You know, it's possible to be outside of that traditional framework and do things. Before we look at that graph, I do want to ask a question. And I don't think this is just kind of coming up in the moment, but I want to make sure that we don't sell it short, because I think in the last 5 years plus, there has been a proliferation of grading tools for piano, where there's different apps out there that can do that grading function. Um, you know, is there any way in which, the Piano Express app is different than that, or what is it improved on, or what makes it unique?
Okay, so it is the grading and the background tracks, that is a companion to our method book. And our method book is really just a method that we thought through, top to bottom, like what tools does a teacher need to teach group lessons?
Yeah.
And so lesson plans, teacher training, um, a, a development of concepts that would work with the studio that wants to keep open enrollment. I mean, that might be a whole nother talk for a whole nother day, but
Yeah.
teaching concepts more like a revolving door than an escalator.
Yeah.
And so we've thought through all those things, and we've put that into, our paper and ink, our books, and
Yeah.
so our and so then with every song in this book, we have on our online platform, we have the software tools to
Yeah.
support it.
As I've gotten more familiar with it, especially over the last year, I think the thing that stands out to me the most, and I'm gonna speak for myself here, and I guess,
Okay.
Greg, I know you've never been slow to correct when I've made a mistake, so if you need to, please be my guest. But I think the thing that really stands out to me the most, because I've had, and again, we keep referring to this graph, it's going to be worth it. Stay tuned. As my son has gone through this system, what stands out to me as really the dividing line is that oftentimes I've seen other technology that's used for assessment or things like that used more as a motivational tool. Like, hey, use this to get your kids excited about music, and they can play this pop song or that song. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right. I think what most kind of impressed me as an educator about the Piano Express system was that the technology wasn't in the forefront. It wasn't in the foreground. It wasn't the whole thing. Right. Like, I think a lot of those other systems, they're kind of the frosting. What I think most impressed me was, and the only other group system in the world that I'd probably do other than my own, was the fact that it really was built with teachers in mind, not the consumer. It was built as a tool for a teacher to basically run a really solid group educational system in their studio that could do open enrollment year round, just as you mentioned there a second ago. So I do think that's worth pointing out, because I think on the surface, one could look at, amongst a certain class of things and put it in a box and say, oh, well, that's just like that other thing. But it really isn't, because of just there's whole aspects to it. Yeah, the whole package. Like it's not even in the same league, let alone the sport. Or maybe I got that backwards. Anyway, yeah, it's not just the same league. It's not even the same sport. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. All right, now I want to share my screen.
Yeah.
Because I think this really gets down to the crux of what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. How do we get kids to practice more at home? And your answer when I asked you earlier was basically, we need to give them the tools to own their own progress. Yeah. I know I'm paraphrasing. Well, I actually want to show a graph that shows what that looks like in actuality. And hold on, I got to pull this up. Okay, just got to share this. Perfect. All right, so showing a little bit of a primitive looking graph here, but this is a 14-day running record of my son's practice inside of this app. And I think, it could look a little bit esoteric at first. Maybe, Greg, walk us through what some of these terms mean, like 165 tries or 132 retry pass, 59, like what's going on here?
Right. Okay, can you pull that into the middle of the screen to maybe make it a little bigger?
I can zoom a little bit more, but I don't know. I don't know if I can pull it in the middle of the screen.
No, that's okay. That's all right. That's all right. So 165 tries means that he has attempted 165 songs with the background track running. That doesn't count any time that he's tried it offline. But he has at least tried 165 passes through songs, and that could be repeated songs. That could be if he tried 165 different songs or the same song 165 times.
And knowing my son's practice habits, it probably was 2 or 3 songs.
Well,
Yeah.
no, actually, it
Oh
was at
no.
least 15. I mean, look down.
Oh, you know what? I forget. He sometimes goes back and plays his old music. I forgot about that.
Okay, right. And so he improved his score 15 times, or actually that could still be the same song. Recent songs and one new perfect score, 0 new passing scores. That's okay. So but he has a new perfect score, so that would be a big accomplishment there. He's 132 retries on a past song. So your son has spent a lot of time going back songs he didn't need to play, but he just loves
Yeah.
playing them. So he's
Yep.
gone back and played them a bunch.
Which again, as teachers, we know that as soon as we mark a page off, it's done. That child's never playing that song again.
Most likely,
most
yeah.
students, most students, again, 16 years of experience here, I know what's what.
Right.
Yeah, and I see, I see because of the gamification, him loving to go back in the music and
Right.
kind of play through the method more. Go ahead.
Right. And so then tried a perfect score. He improved his scores 15 times. And he had 59 times where he got a passing score. What really amazes me, you said that his lesson day was on Friday.
Right, which would correspond with this bar right here.
Right. So the bar that's closest to the right is today.
Yep.
So Monday. The blank one is Sunday. Saturday was a big day.
Yep.
And look at Saturday compared to his lesson day. It dwarfs. Like he spent so much more time getting passing scores and actually, and you know what? And then even here some fails, right? But he didn't give up. He went through and played some songs over and over and over on an off day outside of his lesson, and that means that he is getting the songs really, really accurate. To get a passing score on our software, it needs to be nearly perfect. So it's impressive.
Yeah. And I will just say, just for context, the first year and a half that Calvin was taking lessons under the Express system, I made a point to not be involved. In other words, and my wife and I agreed on this together, that she, having never taken music lessons or anything like that before, would be in charge of his lessons, because I wanted a perfect experiment. I didn't want, oh, well, his dad's a piano teacher. Of course, Jessica oversaw those lessons. I rarely got involved. Like I'm talking like maybe less than once a month that I actually helped solve a problem that happened outside the lesson. And what I will say, and this is kind of why I found this to be so fascinating and why I want to do this video series with you, is that he passes more songs outside, way more songs outside of his lesson than he does in lesson. Mm-hmm. And this is why I wanted to bring this topic up. And I think maybe, there's probably some other things that we might want to say before we sign off here. But again, 15, 16 years teaching piano, I consider what I did to be rigorous in my studio.
Right.
I just never saw this as a consistent thing. And as I look through the data that I have available to me, as I look through many different studios that are using the system now, you see this pattern, right, of kids feeling free to move ahead in their music, but not recreational music. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but music that is designed to push their skill forward, that's in the context of a larger system that's going to take that child to excellence. Right. I just don't, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's any other system in the world that works this way.
I don't know. If I find one, I'll kick myself for working so hard to create the one that I make. I'm like, oh no, I could have just
perfect answer. I love it.
I've heard from parents, concerned parents. I hear this every year. I just heard this last month we have this new student who just hit the ground and she is passing 50, 60 songs a week and
like getting past. Okay.
Yeah. And so, yeah, she finished a 50 song book in 2 weeks. Okay. So she got through an entire book in 2 weeks, and the parents are concerned. They're just like, they're just skating through the basics. They're going through all the basics so fast, it's not going to soak in. what parents need to understand is at the very beginning for a music student, there's a little bit of music making and there's a lot of language learning. And
Mm,
after you learn a lot of language, then there's a lot of music making. And so you can catch you for a student learning the language in an immersive way and being able to play short, simple songs, done, done, done. That's a good thing. That is setting that child up for a lifetime of being able to spend more time in complex music
yes.
that challenges their technique, and they're going to hit those other milestones sooner than later. There is nothing to worry about. I
Yeah.
have too many success stories to worry, and so I just tell the parents, I'm like, just watch. This is a
Yeah.
good thing.
I love the analogy of immersion. And honestly, because of our friendship being so long, I've heard you use this analogy for nearly all my adult life.
Mhm.
Um, and what you've been able to do with the combination of a really um, grounded curriculum and method combined with the tools is create that immersive environment at home as well.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that Calvin likes is he can hit the little TV icon inside the app,
Yeah.
and you teach him at, you know, outside of his lesson if he wants to.
Right.
And
Yeah. Little
yeah,
2-minute tutorial videos. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
We have it.
yeah. So just that you know, ability to do that. So, you know, I think for my part, I've kind of exhausted the questions I had for you, and I think, you know, we've done this topic justice. Is there anything else that you think we maybe left unsaid as we maybe get close to wrapping up here?
No, I would say to teachers, whether you go high tech or low tech, get creative, find ways of find ways of building the child's confidence on all three senses. What is this song
Mm,
supposed to sound like? What is it supposed to feel like in my fingers? And then what am I looking at? Do I understand what I see? Build confidence on those three senses and you'll see more success at home.
mm. Couldn't have said it better myself. I think that's our ending right there. So thanks, Greg. And we've got several more videos that we're going to do in this series with Greg here from grouplessons.com. And thank you. As I always say, thank you for your time and attention. If you have a comment, leave it below. If you're watching this video in a place where you can leave comments, definitely share